What truth survives when even the Emperor averts his gaze? Question drifts through the dark like a relic of thought left to rot. Vox static hisses, parchment crackles, and an age-blighted archive exhales its first breath in 10 millennia. The chronicle awakens slowly, like an ancient predator remembering hunger. Across a deadened cosmos, the Imperium stands as both monument and mausoleum, a colossus built on broken faith and the ash of unnumbered worlds. And yet, beneath its prayers and its agony, something older stirs. Something woven from the first wars of creation, a memory whispered only by ruins that no longer remember their own names. As the record flares to life, its ink bleeds like a wound. It speaks of a sky that once burned with impossible fury, a wound torn across reality itself, a moment the Imperium has buried so deeply that even its ghosts dare not retrieve it. The tale begins on Saphedra, a world lost not through conquest, but through silence. At the height of the Great Crusade, its heavens were said to shimmer with metallic auroras, as though the void itself strained to contain what festered beneath. Explorer fleets approached the planet only once. Their final transmission carried nothing but a single, trembling litany. The firmament weeps fire. Those were the last words before the fleet vanished between one breath and the next. Now only fractured data sermons remain, each contradicting the last, each whispering of an imperial truth severed from history. Some claim the world was consumed by demons, others insist it birthed them. Yet the real terror lies in the suggestion that neither is correct, that something beyond the dichotomy of warp and materium moved there, unseen, uninvited, bending destiny like soft metal. In the era of the heresy's first rumblings, a coterie of remembrancers uncovered a mural deep within the catacombs of Luna, painted with pigments that predated known humanity. It depicted armored giants kneeling before a burning sky, heat radiating from the stone as though remembering flame. Behind them, a colossal shape towered, neither god nor demon, its silhouette fractured like glass under stress. The mural was declared heretic by dawn and sealed behind adamantium, but something leaked into the Imperium's collective soul. Veterans of the Unification Wars muttered in their sleep, speaking of storms that bled and constellations that screamed. The Inquisition would later claim these reports were symptoms of early warp contamination. But some archivists, the kind who outlived their usefulness, wrote forbidden marginalia, suggesting the mural was not prophecy. The chronicle shifts violently, dragging the viewer to the throne world during the tumultuous middle years of the Horus heresy. Terra skies blackened with ash and Vox towers trembled with unending pleas. Among the billions who suffered that siege, a single regiment, the Chthonian Helios Guard, vanished without record from the defensive grid. Their disappearance sparked no inquiry. In the chaos, entire continents fell without anyone noticing. And yet beneath the rubble of the imperial palace, a sealed corridor bears their insignia scorched into the stone. Accounts mention their final deployment, a breach below the palace foundations, a locus of light so intense that mortal eyes liquefied. The survivors babbled of a fire that did not burn, a storm that hunted thought itself. Whatever they faced, it was not listed among the demonic incursions of the heresy. It was something the War Master himself feared to awaken. From the ashes of Terra, the chronicle bleeds into the Age of Reformation. Ecclesiarchs spoke of visions they could not confess, their tongues trembling even as they declared steadfast faith. In private, they described towering figures made of fracture lines, as if reality's bones were showing through. These apparitions walked across the heavens of shrine worlds, visible only during mass pilgrimages when collective devotion reached its zenith. Some scribes believed these were the Emperor's wardens, unseen guardians beyond mortal comprehension. Others whispered they were the remnants of something the Emperor once confronted, not during the Great Crusade, but long before humanity crawled into the stars. When pilgrims stared too long at these shimmering silhouettes, their eyes filled with tears of crimson light. Priests called it a blessing, the Inquisition called it a warning. Neither dared to consider it might be a memory resurfacing from a time before the galaxy belonged to anyone. The next vision emerges from the void between Segmentum Tempestus and Obscurus, where navigators reported a phenomenon known only as the Red Horizon. At first, it appeared as a shimmering band of sanguine light, like a cosmic scar. But the closer Imperial vessels approached, the more their Geller fields groaned, strained, and finally screamed in voices only psychers could hear. Entire fleets rerouted to avoid the region, though no official decree acknowledged its existence. Those who dared cross its borders returned changed if they returned at all. Survivors spoke of colossal shadows drifting just beyond perception, shapes that eclipsed stars without form or substance. In their final stuttering breaths, navigators begged the Emperor for blindness, claiming the red horizon was not a place, but a wound. A wound that had once torn open above a world the Imperium would rather forget. In the quiet centuries of the Nova Terra Interregnum, an archivist named Jurel Cord unearthed a sealed vault beneath the ruins of an astropathic choir. Inside lay an object shaped like a fractured coronet, forged from a material unresponsive to augury or analysis. When touched, it sang. Not with sound, but with visions, a firestorm tearing across the heavens. Angels of impossible geometry descending upon a fortress of living metal, and a single mortal figure standing at the heart of it all, holding aloft a burning sigil that resembled no known mark of the imperial cult. Jurel attempted to record these visions, but his notes grew unstable, warping into sketches of spiraling suns and screaming constellations. The Inquisition confiscated the coronet and branded Jurel a heretic. Yet the vault where it was stored now glows faintly, as if remembering the shape of a forgotten crown. The chronicle shifts into the black year of M38. When Segmentum Solar witnessed a phenomenon scholars could not classify, across dozens of worlds, citizens awoke to find their shadows burned onto walls, floors and ceilings, frozen in postures of terror. The bodies that cast them were simply gone. No warp residue, no biological remains, just absence. Adeptus Mechanicus Magi claimed it was a trans-dimensional rupture. The Ecclesiarchy denounced it as the work of demons. But a handful of terrified survivors described the sky cracking open like a shell, releasing a light so pure and violent that it devoured their world's heartbeat. They swore the light was alive. They swore it was returning. And they swore they heard a question whispered through the blaze, the same ancient question that begins this chronicle. A question humanity was never meant to survive. During the final century of the Reign of Blood, amidst Goj Van Dyer's tyranny, a silent rebellion took shape beneath the catacombs of Ophelia 7, not of mortals, but of relics. Icons pulsed with internal light. Battle standards bled molten gold. Vox altars recited litanies in voices not their own. A choir of Sisters Hospitaller recorded a miracle or horror when a statue of St. Erlin turned its gaze skyward and screamed without lungs. Its wail shook the entire cathedral complex, ripping frescoes from the walls. When the echo died, every living soul present claimed to see the same vision. A blistering tear in the sky, pouring forth radiant fire, not warp fire, at the Emperor's light. Something older, colder, yet burning with purpose. Something searching. The chronicle plunges now into early M40. When the phalanx of the Imperial Fists encountered a derelict craft adrift beyond charted space, its hull was fused into a single seamless shell, as though shaped by pressure beyond physics. Inside, time behaved erratically. Torches guttered against invisible winds, and gravity pulsed like a heartbeat. At the ship's core lay a chamber containing a single figure, human, armored in cataphracti, plates scorched with impossible heat. His heraldry was unfamiliar, his identity lost, yet his gauntlet still clutched a shard of hardened luminescence that flickered like crystallized fire. When removed from his grasp, the shard disintegrated into glowing dust that whispered a location no map recognized. The phalanx sealed the report, but witnesses swore the dead warrior's eyes briefly opened and wept red. In the shadowed years leading into the 41st millennium, as prophecy and nightmare blurred, an astropathic network discovered a repeating pulse hidden beneath standard warp traffic. It was faint, rhythmic, and older than any known human broadcast. Scholars recognized it as a warning beacon, but not one crafted by human hands. Its signal referenced a stellar coordinate that should not exist, a point where astrophysical charts show only a void of impossible depth. The beacon's message, once decoded, formed a single phrase carved into the mind of every psyker who touched it. The fire returns to claim its debt. Within days, the psykers either burned from within or spoke in fractured tongues, describing cities of ash, suspended midair, and a triumphant figure walking through flame untouched. The Imperium classified the beacon as a xeno-artifact, but the oldest records whisper otherwise. Now, the chronicle's final fragment flickers. The story converges back to Verosafidra, the world lost to silence. Long-hidden astropathic scraps reveal that, in the final days before its disappearance, something rose from its surface. Something titanic. Something that set the sky alight in bleeding fire. The light spread through the warp like a ripple across dark water, brushing against Terra itself. Records stopped there. Asked. Or were made to stop. For the last surviving archivist to touch this chronicle, a nameless scribe left only one note in the margins before he vanished. The fire was not destruction. It was arrival. As the chronicle sputters, a new line etches itself into the page, fresh ink forming where none should. It has found another world. The page trembles. Ink drips upward. The ink still drips upward, defying gravity, as though reality itself recoils from what it must now reveal. And in that impossible motion, the chronicle breathes again. It drags us into the shattered thoughts of a sister Pronatus, stationed on the shrine world of Kyra's Mendith, where relics tremble as if in anticipation. She dreams of a sky blooming with red fire, not destructive, but beckoning, and wakes with her palms burnt by symbols she cannot recognize. She hides them beneath her gauntlets, whispering prayers that tremble with fear, for she knows the ecclesiarchy would brand such markings heretical. Yet something in her heart answers the fire, as though a forgotten memory claws its way back to the surface, demanding to be known. The world around her grows still, waiting, listening, as if it senses the arrival of a truth no creed was ever meant to endure. Far across the void, aboard a void fortress drifting between Segmentum Solar and Obscurus, a Lord Inquisitor contemplates an unmarked data codex recovered from the ruins of an astropathic relay burned hollow from the inside. Its pages hum like distant thunder. He studies the final entry, a psychic imprint depicting a world bathed in bleeding light, and feels the faint touch of a presence watching him from behind his own eyes. Doubt, once a stranger to him, now lodges like a splinter in his soul. He wonders, for the first time, whether the Imperium's greatest enemy is not the warp, nor Xenos, nor the traitors he has spent centuries hunting, but the truths the Imperium itself locked away. When he closes the codex, it opens again of its own accord, revealing a page he has never seen. It has chosen its witness. The words are written in his own handwriting. On a frontier forge world where loyalty is measured in blood and faith in steel, a tech priest Dominus feels the machine spirit of an orbital manufactorum scream in terror. Its binary code fractures. It's repeating the same broken phrase. Fire has memory. The Dominus attempts to purge the corruption, but finds the data stream resisting him, shaping itself into a spiraling sigil, older than the Mechanicum's oldest rites. Adepts fall to their knees as engines cough embers of sanguine light. For a moment, every machine turns to face the same direction, toward a single star no chart acknowledges. Panic flickers through the priesthood, though none speak it aloud. Their creed demands certainty. But today, certainty dies in silence, replaced by a new and terrible realization. The Omnissiah may not be the only intelligence that laid claim to human destiny, and something ancient has just reclaimed its due. On the pilgrim world of Relter's Crown, a chaplain of the Black Templars interrogates a lone survivor dragged from an escape pod drifting in system. The prisoner murmurs of a world that never existed, a sky that bled fire, and a legion that knelt to a forgotten flame. When pressed, he speaks a name the chaplain cannot bear to hear twice, for it feels like a forbidden prayer etched directly into the soul. The chaplain strikes the heretic down, yet the man dies smiling, a serenity no allegiance to chaos could ever grant. Troubled, the chaplain prays beneath the cold light of Rilter's fractured moons. As he recites the litanies of purity, the words twist in his mouth, shifting, reshaping. For a heartbeat, his voice speaks not the Emperor's name, but another, a name he cannot remember uttering. A name the stars seem eager to hear again. In the hidden catacombs of Ophelia 7, Canona's Veridit holds vigil before the embalmed heart of Saint Rayla, a relic kept sealed for millennia. Tonight, the reliquary pulses. The heart beats once, a single vast concussion of spirit echoing through the cathedral. The walls bleed lines of crimson light, forming constellations that shift with every breath. Veridit feels fear gnaw through her armor, for she knows miracles do not disobey doctrine. But she calls for her sisters, but the Vox only replies with a child's whisper. Remember what we were. Unable to reconcile this with any imperial teaching, the canonist does not record the event. She dares not. Not yet her faith fractures, not from doubt in the emperor, but from the realization that he may not be the only architect of humanity's long, bloody path. Among the ashes of a ravaged agri-world, a squad of Astra Militarum troopers rests beside a trench filled with corpses still steaming from battle. One soldier hums a lullaby he cannot recall learning, a melody older than the Imperium. When he finishes, every corpse in the trench turns its head toward him. They do not rise. They simply look as if awaiting instruction. The squad flees in terror, but the trooper remains transfixed, feeling an emotion he cannot name. Not fear, nor madness, but recognition. When his officers find him days later, he kneels in the field, alone among the dead, whispering to the empty sky, "The fire remembers us." They execute him for heresy. As his body falls, the clouds above briefly ignite with crimson radiance. In the halls of an administratum spire on Terra itself, a low-ranking scribe discovers that his ledger contains names of planets the Imperium has never recorded. Worlds swallowed by silence, yet written in his trembling hand. His superiors dismiss him, but the names keep appearing, carved into the parchment by no ink he can identify. Some glow faintly. Others pulse like dying stars. Sleepless and desperate, he prays to the Emperor for deliverance. But the answer he receives is not his. The tally is incomplete. Terrified, the scribe burns the ledger. Yet by dawn, another waits on his desk. Pristine and untouched, the names multiplied 1,000-fold, including Terra. Aboard a battle barge of the Blood Angels, a librarian senses a psychic beacon echoing from within the warp, steady, measured, ancient. He traces its rhythm and realizes with dread that it mirrors the beat of a heart. Not human, not demon, something else. Its pulse grows louder with every passing hour, and with it comes visions of warriors clad in armor of molten crimson, their eyes reflecting a conflagration that devours the heavens. Sanguinius legacy trembles within him, a resonance he cannot explain. His brothers see his distress, but he lies, claiming simple warp turbulence. For how can he confess that the beacon feels familiar? As if the Blood Angels were not the inheritors of divine fire, but its exiles. On the death world of Thrixios, a renegade psyker is hunted by the Grey Knights for crimes unspeakable. Cornered atop a basalt cliff, he surrenders without resistance. As they move to restrain him, he speaks in a voice that is not his own. "You are searching for the wrong enemy." His eyes blaze with red luminescence. The knights raise their blades, invoking their sacred wards, but the psyker's next words halt them mid-strike. He did not fall to chaos, he fell to memory. Before they can question him, he bursts into flame. Not warp fire, but the same impossible glow seen only in forbidden records. When the fire dies, nothing remains but ash shaped like a star map, pointing to a dead region of space. In the silent crypts beneath Hydrophine Fortress, a retired Imperial Guard commander confesses to a confessor priest that he once saw the Emperor's face during a near-death vision. The priest expects the usual tale of divine radiance. Instead, the commander describes a vast, wounded, sky-bleeding fire, and a figure standing beside the Emperor, equal in presence, older in bearing. The Emperor did not banish him, he acknowledged him. When the priest rebukes him for blasphemy, the commander weeps, insisting it was not heresy, it was history. Before the priest can alert the Inquisition, the old commander quietly slips a knife between his own ribs, dying with a peaceful smile. His blood stains the floor in the shape of the same sigil found on Kyra's Mendith. Across the galaxy, faint and synchronized, 12 worlds experience a shared phenomenon. For one breath, every star in their night sky turns red. Not dimmed, transformed. Scholars scramble for explanations. Priests proclaim omens. Psychers scream without knowing why. Deep in the void, the red horizon pulses once, then again. And with that second pulse, astropaths everywhere hear a single whisper. The fire has chosen its herald. None know who it means, but someone does. On Kyra's Mendeth, the Sister Pronitus returns to her cell to find a figure waiting, clad in fractured light, neither divine nor demonic. It speaks her name in a voice like burning paper. She falls to her knees, trembling. Rise, it commands. Your emperor hid the truth, will unmake the lie. As she lifts her eyes, the figure sheds its radiance, revealing a face she has seen in Imperial scripture her entire life, a face that should not be alive. The figure wearing the face of scripture stands in the dim cell, its radiance dimming into something painfully mortal. The sister Pronatus tries to speak, but her voice breaks like old glass. She had memorized this face since childhood, a saint who died long before her lineage began. Yet here it stands, breathing softly, its eyes rimmed with embers of crimson fire. It touches her burned palms, and the sigils blaze anew. Pain becomes revelation, revelation becomes terror. The figure leans close and whispers, "The Emperor did not ascend alone." A truth too vast for lungs to hold floods her mind. Memories of a sky bleeding fire, a promise made before humanity had a name, a pact fractured by betrayal older than the Imperium. The cell walls tremble as if recoiling from the memory she now shares. She is chosen, claimed, and she does not know if this claiming is salvation or doom. Across the galaxy, the Lord Inquisitor, who studied the Forbidden Codex, kneels alone in the hollow vaults beneath his fortress. His faith, once steel, now feels like thin parchment soaking in oil. He replays the moment he saw words written in his own hand, words he never wrote. Each repetition feels heavier. He lights a candle at the foot of the steel statue of the Emperor. But the flame warps sideways, bending toward a direction no wind guides. His rosarius trembles. His heart follows suit. He dares speak his fear aloud. Is it treason to question truth? When truth refuses to remain truth, the air shifts. A second flame ignites beside the first, though no spark exists. Extinguishes both with a trembling hand. In the darkness, something breathes behind him, steady, patient, familiar. On the Forge world, racked by the scream of its machine spirits, the tech priest Dominus undergoes ritual self-purification, but doubt corrupts faster than corruption itself. He replays the spiraling sigil that emerged unbidden from the data stream, and wonders if the Omnissiah truly encompasses all divine intellect. What if there was another architect, another engine of fate, written into matter before the first star burned? His mechadendrites twitch, his augmetics stutter. Even metal quakes beneath revelation. When he returns to the manufactorum, he finds entire assembly lines frozen mid-motion. Every servo-skull in the chamber stares toward the same point in the void, their dead optics burning with red reflections. One skull drops from the air, cracking open to reveal a glowing fragment of crystallized fire. It pulses once. Machinery kneels. Aboard the Black Templar's crusade vessel, the chaplain stands alone before the blade he used to strike down the mysterious survivor. The steel ripples, as if caught in phantom heat. He tries to recite the catechisms of hate, but the words falter. What if the name whispered by the dying man was not heresy? What if it was history buried deeper than any archive? He slams his helm against the cold wall, desperate to extinguish doubt. Yet when he looks up, scripture etched along the chapel walls rearranges itself into the same forbidden sigil burned into the sisters' palms. He roars in denial, but the ship's systems flicker with crimson light. For one fractured moment, every servomotor, every purity seal, every sacred engraving whispers the same phrase: first flame, first oath. His hatred wavers, his faith fractures. Canones Veridit paces the echoing halls of Ophelia 7. Hiding the secret of the beating relicart from every sister under her command. She should report it, she does not, she cannot. Faith is her armor, yet doubt pours through every seam. She descends into the reliquary once more, standing before St. Rayla's crystal-bound organ. It is still now, but she feels a presence behind her, the gentle weight of a hand on her shoulder. She turns, expecting a sister. Instead, she sees a woman dressed in robes of luminous white flame, her expression mournful, ancient, resigned. "You believed miracles were simple," the apparition says. They never were. The canoness falls to her knees, but the figure is already fading, leaving behind only a single floating ember. It drifts toward the relic heart and sinks inside it. On the agri world of the silent dead, commissars interrogate the troops who witnessed corpses turning their gazes toward the humming soldier. Their testimonies break like cracked stone under pressure, too many truths fighting to surface at once. One trooper, trembling and half-mad. claims he heard the dead whisper, "You forgot the first vow." Another insists the corpses weren't merely watching, they were remembering him. The commissars dismiss all accounts as psychic contamination. But that night, as the officers gather to plot disciplinary action, the wind carries a faint hum, the same ancient lullaby the executed soldiers sang. The ground quivers. The corpses in the trench sit upright as one. Somewhere in the dark, a spark ignites. On Terra, the scribe who kept receiving impossible ledgers seeks sanctuary in the Basilica of the Ascendant Throne. But even here, where the Emperor's radiance should purge all doubt, he feels watched. He kneels before the golden effigy, tears streaking parchment dust down his face. His prayer breaks midway as he sees something impossible. The statue's eyes flicker, not with light but with color. Crimson, only for a moment. Then darkness. He stumbles back, heart convulsing. When he looks down, his ledger sits open at his knees, though he left it burning hours before. New names fill the pages, not planets, not systems. People. Billions. Including his own. And at the bottom, written in glowing scarlet, witness. The Blood Angel's librarian finally succumbs to the beacon's call. In the meditative gloom of his sanctum, he allows the rhythm to dominate his mind. A starburst vision erupts, crimson warriors standing beneath a sky aflame, their armor etched with the same shimmering sigils that burn inside his own veins. A figure steps forward from the conflagration, wings of shattered light trailing behind him. It is not sanguineous, it is older. It looks upon him with recognition. He screams as the vision brands itself into his psychic core, rewriting something fundamental within him. When his brothers break into the chamber, they find him kneeling amid scorched glyphs. His eyes glow with fire.
Oh.
His first words, "We were not the first angels." The Grey Knights investigate the psyker who combusted into a star map. Their prognosticars study the Ash constellation and recoil, for the map depicts not the warp, but the physical galaxy twisted around a single point of impossible gravity. A point that should not exist, yet appears in ancient Mechanicum star records, erased from official history. One knight mutters a forbidden phrase, "Origin." Another silences him with a blow, but the word lingers. When they try to destroy the Ash, it refuses to disperse. Instead, it shapes itself into a single, burning glyph. The knights recognize none of its form, yet all feel its meaning. Come witness. The fortress shakes. Something's approaching. At Hydrophon Fortress. The confessor priest, who heard the commander's heretical final words, cleans the blood from the sigil-shaped stain. But the stain refuses to fade. The stone grows warm, pulsing as if with a heartbeat. That night, the priest dreams of a battlefield of shattered suns. Two figures stand at its heart, the Emperor, radiant and sorrowful, another, burning, wounded, betrayed. In the dream, the Emperor speaks. "Forgive me." The priest wakes screaming, drenched in blood, not his own. The sigil on the stone now pulses visibly. It matches the mark on the sister's palms. Then, across the galaxy, the red horizon pulses again, for the third time. This time, the pulse does not echo, it spreads, tearing across the warp like a blade of living flame. Astropaths fall, machines choke. Priests weep blood. Every witness feels a voice press into their souls. The first fire rises. On Kyra's Mendath, the figure wearing the saint's face places its burning hand upon the sister Pronatus. Light erupts, swallowing the cell. When it fades, she stands transformed, armored in radiant glyphs, her eyes burning the same crimson as the bleeding sky of legend. The figure smiles, ancient and sorrowful. "Welcome home." The light around the sister Pronatus dims just enough to reveal her silhouette, no longer a humble guardian of relics, but something reforged in ancient fire. Her breath comes in ragged bursts as the cell reforms around her, the air still trembling from whatever transformation has not yet finished its work. The figure wearing the saint's face watches her with an expression that is neither pride nor triumph. But grief so old, it erodes the soul merely to witness it. "You have returned to the oath your kind abandoned," it murmurs. She tries to speak, but her voice carries two tones. Her own, and one that echoes like a remembered star dying. Through the crimson glow of her eyes, she sees visions not meant for mortal mind cities, built before humanity's birth, burning beneath a sky that bleeds fire, and she feels the weight of a vow sworn in that ancient age, a vow she never knew she made. Far from Kyra's Mendeth, aboard the inquisitorial Void Fortress, the Lord Inquisitor pores over the Forbidden Codex, now warm to the touch, as though it anticipates what comes next. His faith fractures with every new revelation scrawled across its pages, written in handwriting that shifts between his and someone else's. Someone who remembers his memories better than he does, clutches his Aquila, knuckles whitening with the strain. The statues around him, effigies of martyrs, saints, loyal heroes, seem to lean closer, their stone features twisted by shadows into silent accusations. He whispers a single question to the dark. What betrayal is greater, hiding truth or discovering it? The codex snaps shut, as if in answer. A whisper slides through the chamber, soft as falling ash. Choose. The tech priest Dominus stands at the edge of his manufactorum's highest spire, mechadendrites clinging to the rail like withered fingers. Below him, the entire forge world falls silent, every reactor, every data stream frozen in reverence or terror. The fragment of crystallized fire he recovered pulses in uneven rhythm, syncing with his own augmented heartbeat. He realizes with dawning horror that the sigil burned into the world's networks isn't a corruption at all, it is a command. A recall, a summons. He turns his gaze to the heavens, where a red wound slowly tears open across the void. For the first time in centuries, he feels something like awe, dread, or both entwined as tightly as the circuitry welded into his bones. He whispers the old words, Omnissiah, guide me, but the wind carries only silence. The machine spirits have chosen a different master. Within the Black Templar's crusade ship, the chaplain kneels alone in the dim chapel, helm removed, face carved with lines of devotion and doubt. His gauntlet fists rest upon the pummel of his Crozius, which flickers with residual light from the ship's prophetic malfunction. Scripture reshapes itself behind him, the forbidden sigil glowing like a brand burned into the metal walls. He dares not look at it. He fears he might understand it. He prays loud, fierce, desperate, but his own voice betrays him, cracking beneath the weight of unspoken truths. He remembers the dying man who spoke the ancient name, the serenity in his eyes, the peace no heretic should possess. He remembers the brief moment his faith wavered, and he wonders if doubt itself is the heresy or the awakening. When he lifts his head, the chapel's candles flare crimson, casting his reflection in armor that is not his. On Ophelia 7, Canoness Veridit watches the relic heart of Saint Rayla pulse beneath its crystal shell. The single ember absorbed into its chambers, beating like a second heart. She feels each pulse resonate through her bones, unraveling certainties she once believed immutable. She recalls every oath she made, every life she condemned in the Emperor's name, every sin she justified beneath the doctrine of unyielding faith. Now, standing in the relic's glow, she feels something she has not felt since childhood, fear untouched by duty. She kneels, unable to stand beneath the crushing weight of revelation, and whispers, "If this is truth, let me bear it." The relic heart responds, its beat doubling, tripling until the entire cathedral shakes. The stained glass windows shimmer with impossible light, rearranging their holy scenes into visions of a different age. An age where fire walked beside gods. On the agri-world, the corpses that once sat upright now stand in full procession. A silent parade across the moonlit fields, guided by the echo of the lullaby that first awakened them. Survivors watch from guard towers, trembling as the dead move with purpose rather than hunger. Their eyes glow faintly with crimson reflections, not of warp fury but memory-old, aching memory. When the wind shifts, the soldiers hear voices rising from the procession, not moans. Words. Words in a language older than High Gothic, filled with sorrow and longing. The officer leading the watch feels something break inside him. He served the Imperium his entire life, believing death the final duty. Yet here, the dead march with more purpose than the living. And their silent message burns into him like a brand. We remember the first oath. Do you? On Terra itself, the scribe flees from the basilica, stumbling into the polluted streets of the Imperial Palace district. The ledger still follows him, peering in his hands under his cloak. Pressed against his chest, no matter where he tries to discard it. The names written within now flicker like dying stars. He turns one final corner, and collapses against a wall, panting, pleading with the Emperor for mercy. The crowd flows around him, oblivious. Then, the ledger opens on its own, revealing a new page, its parchment wet with fresh crimson ink. Only one name is written, his, and beneath it, a single phrase, "Prepare the account." Above him, the sky flickers red. The Blood Angel's librarian locks himself within a stasis chamber to contain the visions that threaten to tear his mind open. But the stasis field fails, the beacon burns through it, rewriting the very air around him. He sees again the figure with shattered wings, sees warriors of molten crimson kneeling beneath a bleeding sky, sees a ritual older than the Imperium that binds angels to fire and fire to destiny. He hears a voice so familiar it shatters him. We were forsaken to protect the lie. When the stasis chamber finally bursts, the librarian emerges transformed, his burning, veins glowing, his soul tethered to something the chapter does not recognize. His brothers look upon him and step back in horror. He raises his gaze to the heavens. He is returning. The Grey Knights struggle to contain the ash map, which now spreads like liquid fire across the sanctum floor. The glyph at its center spins slowly, generating harmonic tones that warp into voices. Unfamiliar voices, ancient voices. The prognosticars form a circle, calling upon every protective rite known, but each attempt only accelerates the ash's expansion. In that instant, he sees a vision, a throne of fire abandoned, a crown broken, a pact shattered. He recoils, screaming, the Emperor was not the first. His brothers silenced him with blade and oath, but the truth now echoes through the chamber like a wound refusing to close. Hydrophone Fortress shakes with rising tremors as the sigil on the stone pulses brighter than any flame. The confessor priest, drenched in cold sweat, tries to scrub it away. Each attempt only deepens its glow. Then the chamber dims. Someone stands behind him, someone impossibly tall, cloaked in a mantle of burning symbols. He turns and sees a figure whose existence is heresy, whose presence is mercy and judgment intertwined. The figure lays a hand upon his brow, filling his mind with burning light. You will speak the truth they buried. When he collapses, the sigil on the floor expands, swallowing the entire chamber. Across the galaxy, the red horizon pulses a fourth time, this one not an echo, but a command. Systems fail, astropaths bleed, warp storms recoil. And in the silence that follows, every soul who has seen the crimson light hears the same whisper, the oath-bearer rises. On Kyra's Mendeth, the transformed sister steps from her shattered cell into a corridor filled with kneeling figures cloaked in fractured light, bearing weapons of crystalline fire. They bow not to the saintly figure behind her, but to her. As the world trembles beneath an approaching force, the figure whispers one final truth. You were the first flame. The roar of the shattered heavens still echoed when the dust of the last assault began to settle, as though the sky itself had not yet accepted what had been torn from it. In the molten dusk, the ninth choir of the penitent marched through drifting ash. Their hymn fractured, hollow, scarcely more than a whisper of devotion stretched thin over despair. Brother Ascendant Malkarin felt the weight of the final decree burning in the Vox runes, sealed to his skull the Emperor's silence. The order spoken only when all hope had already been spent. Ahead, the ruins of the Severan Basilica trembled with the heartbeat of something ancient waking, and Malkarin, shamed, scarred, clinging to faith by threads, knew the time for absolution had burned away. Only reckoning remained, and it waited within those ruins like a throat opening to swallow the last light left in the world. A storm of broken faith gathered over the battlefield as Captain Veros entered the basilica's corpse-like halls. His armor cracked, his helm flickering with static like a dying eye. Each step awakened memories he had spent decades burying the pact of Chiron's Gate. The oath he had sworn when he was still whole, still convinced that loyalty was a blade incapable of rust. Now he felt the truth he had denied for centuries, gnawing upward from the marrow of the world. Statues of saints lay split open, their stone faces spilling dust like blood. Scripture curled black on the walls, burned into patterns resembling screams. Varos stood at the center of a once holy chamber and felt the undeniable pull of a voice he had betrayed, a whisper only he could hear. You left me. The floor beneath him shuddered, as if the basilica remembered his sin, and intended to return it. Meanwhile, on the outer ramparts, Inquisitor Severian knelt among the dying, her gloves coated with the mingled blood of heretics and loyalists alike. The lines between the two had blurred beyond salvation. She did not weep. Inquisitors were carved from sterner stone, yet her throat tightened as she traced a symbol in the dust. It's not of the Aquila, but of something older, forbidden even to recall. The wounded clung to her robes, whispering prayers, begging for truth, but she had none to offer. Her rosette felt heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. It weighed like a lie. She looked skyward, where fire still rained in slow, drifting arcs, and she understood that the war they fought was no longer for victory, only for postponement. A breath, heartbeat. One more hour before the final truth found them. And deep in her mind, a question she had silenced for decades rose again like rot blooming in the dark. What if the Emperor had never wanted to be a god? Within the basilica's inner sanctum, Malkrin found the remnants of the eclipsed council, 12 robed figures kneeling in perfect stillness, their skin painted with runes that pulsed like dying embers. Their eyes stared upward, unblinking, as though fixed on revelations invisible to mortal sight. The air around them tasted metallic, the temps of ozone and psychic bleed. Malkrin approached, his weapon trembling in his grip. He had expected a cult. He had expected blasphemers. Instead, he found scholars of the Imperium's lost past, men and women who had once served in the archives, sealed since the age of apostasy. One of them exhaled, the sound barely more than a sigh, and whispered, "We warned them. They buried us with our truth." Before Malkrin could demand explanation, the chamber dimmed, and the runes upon the council's flesh ignited. A presence settled over the room like cold breath on the back of his neck. Outside, war thundered anew. Varos rejoined his warriors on the basilica's causeway as traitor engines emerged from the storm, towering abominations. Of metal and hatred, their pilots fused to the machines through wounds that glistened like open maws. The loyalists formed ranks, but their movements were slow, exhausted, as though each step cost a memory. Bolter fire roared, and the causeway transformed into a charnel ground of shattered masonry and boiling blood. Varos fought like a man whose soul had already been judged, carving through heretic armor with strokes born of fury and regret. Yet every kill felt lighter than it should, every victory hollower. Between bursts of gunfire, he heard it again, the voice that had whispered his name in the sanctum. "You left me." And for the first time in centuries, Captain Varos wondered if the enemy he truly feared had not come from beyond the basilica, but from within it. Severian pushed through the ranks of the wounded to reach the astropathic vault, guided by a dread she could no longer contain. Sparks of raw psychic discharge crawled along the walls like veins of lightning trapped beneath stone. Inside, the astropaths had bound themselves to their own thrones, claws dug into silver restraints, their eye sockets streaming rivers of luminescent tears. They chanted in a dozen languages at once, each voice a fractured shard of prophecy, agony, and warning. When Severian stepped forward, one lifted its head toward her, though it had no eyes left to see. "We have touched a truth the Imperium buried," it moaned, voice trembling like glass. "And it is awakening because they lied." The vault shook. One of the astropaths convulsed, vomiting shimmering blood. Severian reached out to steady it, and recoiled when the soul trapped in its mind whispered her own name with impossible familiarity. Back in the sanctum, the eclipsed council began to levitate, limbs twitching in perfect sync, chests rising and falling with alien rhythm. Malkrin watched in horror as their individual voices braided into one, a chorus woven of guilt, prophecy, and mourning. Through them poured a vision, the Imperium at its birth, standing on the bones of truths too dangerous for memory. He saw a pact made not with gods, but with something far colder, a bargain carved into the foundation of humanity's golden dream. And then he felt the presence behind it all, watching him from the dark between breaths. His faith wavered, his knees buckled. The council's leader turned his empty gaze toward Malkrin and spoke with a voice that was not his. "You carry his echo. Bring him to me." The runes flared. Malkrin fell to the ground. Outside the basilica, the earth began to tremble. Varos felt the tremor like a shock through his armor. The traitor. Engines paused, their pilots screaming as if their machine souls sensed something older than hatred rising beneath the battlefield. The thunder of artillery faltered. Even the storm seemed to recoil. Varos signaled a halt, though his warriors barely understood why. For a moment, the causeway was swallowed by unnatural silence, the kind that exists only before reality bends. Then the stones split apart. A pillar of light, red as cauterized flesh, erupted from the basilica's heart and tore through the sky. Varos staggered back, vision seared. He heard Malkorin's voice through the vox, desperate, cracking. It's not a weapon, it's a memory. But the message drowned under the roar of awakening power. Varos sensed something pulling him toward that light. Something he feared he had once sworn allegiance to. Severion felt the psychic shockwave rip through the vault, shattering conduits, flinging astropaths like ragdolls. One, still conscious, crawled to her feet, clutching her robes. He is coming, it rasped. Not the one they preached, the one they buried. Severion felt cold flood her veins. She knew precisely what truth they meant. The one she had hunted for decades, hidden beneath sects, heresies, and redacted histories. She sprinted from the vault, ignoring the collapsing walls, the screams of dying psychers. She had to reach the sanctum before the truth manifested, for it devoured everything they still pretended to believe. As she ran, a voice whispered through the ruin, cold and familiar. Severion, you were my most faithful. Her steps faltered. A memory she had buried centuries ago forced itself back into the light, a face she had sworn never to recall. Malkorin crawled to the center of the sanctum as the council's bodies burned with ethereal fire, their souls unraveling into the rising vortex above. The ground vibrated with a heartbeat not his own. He tried to pray, but no words answered. Something vast, something exiled, pressed against the edge of reality. The vortex cracked open, revealing not a form, but an absence, a silhouette carved from the idea of betrayal. Malkorin felt his chest tighten as it lowered toward him, its outline shimmering like a half-remembered god. You are the key, it whispered. Your blood remembers what your mind does not. Malkorin screamed as runes ignited beneath his skin. He felt memories not his own surfacing, battles he had never fought, vows he had never sworn, a betrayal he had never committed, and yet he remembered them. Varos forced his way into the basilica as the storm of light widened, swallowing columns and statues whole. His warriors followed until the weight of the unseen force ripped them apart molecule by molecule. Varos alone pushed through, armor crumbling, lungs burning. When he entered the sanctum, he saw Malkorin suspended in midair, body dissolving in streams of memory. Severion stumbled in behind him, eyes wide with recognition and horror. The silhouette within the vortex turned toward them. My children, it murmured, voice like a wound reopening. You were shaped from me. Varos felt his heart freeze. He had heard that voice once, long ago, before the Imperium's lies took shape. Severion shook her head violently. No, you were erased. The figure smiled. Yet you still followed me. The basilica collapsed around them as the vortex stabilized, the silhouette growing clearer, more defined. A figure neither god nor man. Something the Imperium had once depended on before deciding it must be forgotten.
Ow.
The air tasted like burning parchment and old oaths. Varos stepped forward, sword trembling. Malkorin's fading voice whispered, "Don't. Trust him." Severion realized then what the council had done. They had not tried to summon this being. They had tried to warn the Imperium of its return. But it was too late. The figure reached toward Varos, its touch brushing his helm like a father greeting a lost son. You left me, it repeated softly. Varos' eyes wide with terror and recognition whispered back, I remember. And in that moment, as truth finally rose from the grave, the Imperium had built for it. The silhouette's eyes opened. They were the same color as the Emperor's. The silence that followed the opening of the silhouette's eyes did not belong to any world made by hands. It descended like the hush after creation's first roar, settling upon the broken basilica and the shattered warriors who still clung to breath. Varos felt the weight of that gaze strip centuries from his soul, peeling back layers of duty, lies, and borrowed faith until only the raw, trembling truth remained. Severion stepped forward, her rosette dim and cracked, as though it too recognized the presence that now filled the chamber. The silhouette regarded them with a sorrow so vast it reshaped the air. Then, like a candle guttering in a ruined shrine, its form began to dim. The vortex unwove itself, threads of memory drifting upward like burned scripture. And as the last echo faded, the figure whispered, "I was never your god." The words sank into the stone, into their bones, into the galaxy itself. When the light died, the basilica collapsed inward with the quiet exhaustion of a dying saint. Dust drifted like a snow. Veros rose slowly, armor slashed and hollow, feeling as though an entire age had passed through him. Severion knelt where the vortex had stood, her fingers trembling as she traced the scorch mark left behind, a pattern not of any known language, yet hauntingly familiar to her oldest nightmares. Round them the bodies of the eclipsed council lay unmoving, their souls burned clean by their final prophecy.
Ow.
Malkorin's remains glimmered as faint sparks before dissolving completely, carried away as memory into the still air. Outside, the battle had ended not with victory, but abandonment. The traitor engines had fallen silent. The storm had receded. It was as though the galaxy itself had paused to listen, and hearing the truth, had withdrawn into contemplation. Across the plains beyond the basilica, the battlefield lay strewn with the remnants of devotion. Broken banners fluttered weakly from snapped poles, their colors muted beneath layers of soot. Corpses lay in lines that formed patterns only the dead could understand. A lone choir marine dragged himself through the dust to a ruined shrine, its icon shattered into 1,000 glittering fragments. He reached toward one piece, a shard of the Emperor's likeness, and saw his own reflection inside it, warped and hollow. For the first time in his life, he felt no judgment in that reflection, no command, no divine pressure, only the quiet presence of his own mortality staring back. He whispered a prayer out of habit, but the wind carried it away before it even fully formed, scattering it into the gray dawn like a thought the universe no longer cared to keep. Severion and Veros emerged from the basilica's skeletal remains and beheld what the night had left behind. Not survivors, but witnesses. A handful of guardsmen huddled around a flickering chem lamp, their faces pale and distant, as though they had seen the galaxy blink. A tech priest knelt beside a fallen engine, tracing symbols of farewell onto its cooling armor plates. None asked what had happened within the basilica. None dared. Severion carried the final remnant of the silhouette's passing, a thin line of strange luminescence etched along her palm. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat that was not hers. Veros walked beside her, silent, his helm tucked beneath his arm, as though bare flesh could better sense the shifting weight of reality. Together they moved through the aftermath, neither commanders nor saviors, but remnants themselves, fragments of an old faith, trying to understand its own fracture. As morning bled across the ruined horizon, the survivors gathered at the foot of the basilica, awaiting orders that would never come. Veros stood before them, struggling to speak. His voice, once strong enough to command legions, faltered like a candle in wind. "The enemy has withdrawn," he said, though the words rang hollow. "We endure. Endurance." It was all that remained to them now, stripped of purpose, stripped of certainty. Behind him, Severion studied the sky, still scarred by the pillar of light that had torn it open, and wondered whether the truth they had glimpsed would ever reveal its full shape, or whether humanity would spend the next 10,000 years chasing its shadow. She felt a quiet grief settle into her bones, the kind that never speaks aloud, the kind that waits. Later, when the dead were laid in rows and the wounded tended with dwindling supplies, Severion entered the remnants of the astropathic vault. Every wall was melted into flowing metal. Every psychic conduit frayed down to ionized dust. Only one astropath remained alive, breathing in slow, uneven gasps. When she approached, it lifted its featureless face with an expression she could not name. "Did you see him?" it whispered. "Did you hear the truth?" Severion knelt beside the dying psyker and answered not with words but with silence. The astropath smiled faintly, as if this confirmed its deepest fear and deepest hope at once. "Good," it murmured. "Then remember what follows." Its breath grew shallow. Its last words drifted out like incense. "Truth is only mercy when spoken by the dead." Then its form quieted, joining the countless souls already surrendered to the dust. Veros wandered the outer ruins alone, his thoughts drifting through the labyrinth of centuries he no longer trusted. He passed the remains of a pre-imperial mural unearthed by the bombardment, a depiction of humanity reaching toward a distant, haloed figure. But now the figure's halo was cracked, revealing a deeper layer beneath. Not divinity, but chains. Varos touched the ancient paint, feeling flakes crumble beneath his fingers. Had the Imperium misunderstood its own maker? Or had it shaped the truth to fit the empire it desired? He remembered the silhouette's voice, not condemning, not demanding, only unbearably sorrowful. "I was never your god." The words replayed like a wound reopening. And for the first time in his long life, Varos wondered whether faith built on a lie could still save anything at all, or whether its only purpose was to keep humanity blind and obedient, marching into the dark without question. As night fell again, Severion gathered the surviving commanders within a fractured chapel whose stained glass had melted into rivers of color. The council formed a ragged circle. No one spoke the usual rites. No one invoked the Emperor's judgment. Instead, they spoke of rebuilding, of evacuating the system, of burying the dead. Practical, mortal plans. Severion listened, her mind drifting to the luminescent line on her palm. It pulsed as the chapel's winds echoed through empty pews. When the others finally dispersed, she remained alone, staring at the altar. Once, it had been a place of unwavering faith. Now, it felt like a tombstone for everything they once believed. She rested her hand upon the altar and whispered, "If you were never our god, what are we to become?" The chapel gave no answer. Only the dying light through melted glass replied, trembling faintly on the floor like a soul trying to find its way. On the third day, the sky turned a soft, bruised violet. Smoke from the pyres drifted upward in slow spirals, glowing as dawn touched them. The survivors moved with reverence, gathering remnants of torn banners and shattered icons to place them upon a single memorial mound. There were no speeches, no hymns, only quiet breathing, the rustle of ash, and the occasional crackle of a distant fire. Varos laid his sword upon the mound, its blade chipped and stained, a relic of duty that had survived long enough to question itself. Severion placed the broken rosette alongside it. In that moment, they felt united by something deeper than allegiance and understanding that their faith had changed forever, reshaped not by heresy, but by truth too heavy for the galaxy to carry. And yet, they endured. Fragile, uncertain, but alive. On the final night before evacuation, Severion stood at the edge of the ruins, watching the stars flicker like dying embers. The luminescent line on her palm dimmed at last, fading to a faint memory. Varos joined her, silent. They watched as the basilica's last tower collapsed in on itself, its stones falling with the softness of old snow. "Do you think he is gone?" Varos asked. She considered the question carefully. "No," she said. "Truth does not die, it waits." They both looked skyward. The constellation known as the Emperor's Crown shimmered faintly, one star dimmer than the rest, as though something had brushed against it. Severion exhaled a long, quiet breath. "We will be judged by what we choose to remember," she said. Varos nodded. Neither of them spoke again. A lone remembrancer, surviving by miracle or accident, inscribed the final account in a cracked data slate, as transport ships carried the remnants of the Imperial force into the void. He wrote of the basilica's fall of warriors and priests, of the silhouette that rose from forgotten pages of history. He did not claim to understand what had been revealed, did not pretend to interpret the silence left behind. Instead, he described the ruins. The dust drifting across empty altars, the fading banners whispering in the wind, the hollow footprints of gods and mortals alike. And then, in a final quiet line, he posed the question that would haunt all who read his chronicle. If faith survives after truth is torn away, what then is faith? His writing ended there, not in certainty, but in the lingering echo of a galaxy still learning how to grieve. Thus the chronicle closes, not with triumph, nor with despair, but with the soft exhale of a universe remembering its wounds. The war will continue, the Imperium will endure, the truth will sleep again, beneath cathedrals and ashes. But somewhere in the cracks between stars, the silhouette's eyes still watch, waiting, wondering, quiet as breath. If you wish this forgotten history to reach others wandering the long night, like, subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments so that together we stand witness.